Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Telling Tales. We make atmospheric tabletop role-playing live streams here for you on Twitch, and we hope you enjoy them. Tonight is Tuesday, of course, and that means it's Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, to be specific, and Fall of London, to be even more specific. We're joined, as ever, by Steve, our stream manager, who'll pop on screen now, just so you're not alarmed to your very core if his face turns up in the future. Steve is going to be monkeying around behind the scenes, moving around cameras, moving around pictures, chat modding, all that fun stuff. How are you doing tonight, Steve?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, doing well.
Excellent.
I do want chips though now.
You after the chip talk in the chat, yeah. Although I worry that obviously any American viewers might get the wrong impression about the wrong kind of chips. But there we go. Steve will now be banished back to the nether realm from whence he came, so I can do the promo, and indeed another form of nether realm, one where people just talk about their links all the time. Down below we have links. We have links to our Twitch and to our YouTube. You're watching us on one, why not check out the other? We've got links to our Discord if you want to join us and talk role play things, telling tales things. We've got links to our Patreon. If you love what we do, why not help us and support us? We've got lots of tasty treats on there, character creation videos and the like. Go check it out. We've got links to all our social media, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff. Check them out below. Check out everything. Never stop checking out our links. We also run 2 more weekly series. We run Call of Cthulhu on Mondays and Symbaroum on Wednesdays. They're all at 8 o'clock GMT that we start them. We have monthly one-shots. We've run Alien and Troika already, and we've got Morkborg coming up soon, and that's on April 3rd, which someone the other day reliably informed me is actually Easter weekend, which I wasn't aware of because, I don't know, godless heathen, whatever, take your pick. So check those things out too. Just as a kind of guide to what we're doing here as well, we are running Fall of London, which is a pre-written story. We're running it as a kind of little side story to our actual ongoing campaign. So if you dive into our previous stuff, you might get a bit confused. We have an ongoing campaign called London Ascendant. This is Fall of London. It's kind of a flashback thing with different characters, but you can just enjoy it for what it is. It's fine for what it is. And speaking of enjoying it and what it is, tenuous. Let's bring on our first player, and today we're going to be bringing on Pierre. Pierre is playing Tommy, and like all the players at the moment, Pierre doesn't know much about who he's playing because the characters don't know much about themselves. But Tommy is a Nosferatu and perhaps a veteran of some kind.
Maybe I'm getting like little flashes of that.
Little flashes. So what happened last week?
Yeah, so we left off having just escaped kind of the riverbank and escaped from a bunch of people who were trying to kill us. Things have changed. The mortals are a threat. And so we sort of had a bit of a think that maybe we needed to go somewhere safe, but we didn't really know where safe was. In the end, we settled on going for a hotel, which of course we all imagined in like classic 40s style, but we were presented with something that I imagined looked something like a travel lodge. And this modern world is rather strange. I'm not personally, as a Nosferatu, and a pretty, horrifying one at that. I'm not that comfortable with all these bright lights, so I sort of wanted to get in as quickly as possible. We went in past the clerk, at which point one of our crew, Catherine, who had not used Blush of Life, approached the receptionist and kind of freaked them out a little bit and put me on edge, certainly. So I sort of stayed around and lurked for a while, watching. But the person seemed obsessed with a small little, like, glowing box that I've come to understand is what phones are these days. And yeah, eventually it seemed like, they were uninterested, so I left them. We ended up going to our rooms and boarding them up, and I slept in a cupboard with I believe it was Henry, which was
glamour of the immortal life of a vampire.
Oh, yes. I imagine that cupboard is going to smell lovely for the cleaning people who come in there in the morning. Anyway, we were woken by a knocking that turned out to be Shirazi, who is a person who is basically our kind of like our caretaker so far, has been kind of guiding us on our way. And we had a few questions for him, and he told us a little bit about some of the people that we were intending to meet at an upcoming party.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It occurs to me that there was an important story beat I haven't actually handed out to anyone for recaps, and that is that you had a phone number that had been given to you by Shirazi to try and contact to attend Queen Anne's party. Queen Anne, the Prince of London, and Catherine called it and had a somewhat tense conversation with someone they feel they didn't like, and you were informed that Queen Anne would be expecting gifts when you arrived at the party the following evening. So most of the rest of the evening was your characters going off doing little jobs and acquiring these gifts. Tommy didn't do much because Tommy's intended gift is
my own body in the form of war. Yeah, I said that. Yeah. No.
Easily
in the violent way.
Your services as a warrior, essentially.
Yes. That's a better way of phrasing it, Matt.
It's a much better way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
And I don't think Tommy really did anything else with the evening. Is that right?
No, I didn't. I spent a bit of time doing a few push-ups, a few pull-ups, getting in shape, getting ready.
Sure. And now we'll bring on the other players and kind of quickly run through what they each did with their evening. First off, we've got Justin, who's playing Alice. Again, we don't know much about Alice, but she seems to have knowledge of the mystical arts.
She's pretty mystical, and what she did with her, I guess, time was assemble a devious flower message using the symbology of plants to say, hey, let's be friends, but remember, Mithras, eh? Mithras? You like Mithras, right? Basically.
You guys like Mithras, right?
You guys like Mithras. We all like Mithras, right?
Yeah, and that was pretty successful. I think you went to Camden and got some stuff. Alice also had not one but two moments of memoriam, of remembering things from her previous life before she was in torpor.
Yeah, there was me kind of begging on the streets, trying to tell people's fortunes, and then also pulling plants out of the earth for a ritual, and feeling in communication with spiritual forces.
Mm-hmm. So let's bring out our next player and see what they spent their evening doing. They had a busy evening. There were two busy evenings we have left to describe. It's safe to say that one of them was much more successful than the other. So Neill is on next. And Neill, go ahead and tell us what Catherine did with her evening.
Well, she decided that she really needed to have a good gift for Queen Anne to make an impression. So went out to a local gallery, using Blush of Life this time in deference to this weird anti-kindred obsession that seems to be going on, and looked for mortal artists to paint Queen Anne's portrait. Hopefully one with an interesting resonance, but at least immortal. Out of a 10-die pool, this is more interesting than it sounds, out of a 10-die pool, I had one success, followed by 2 successes with willpower. So eventually managed to find a way of getting them to come with me, but it was very painful and distracting. Managed to write a vaguely acceptable poem in my spare time, just in case that gift would not be well received, and got a wonderful dress as a bargain. Only have £100 left.
Yes, but still pretty good for a Harrods purchase, right? So not too bad. So let's bring on, even if, which is borderline of acceptable, obviously. Let's bring on John now. John plays Henry. John is already looking grumpy. Tell us why you're grumpy, John. Tell us the night that Henry had.
Henry definitely had a night, but it's not over yet, as we established earlier. He began by looking for a gift for Queen Anne, which is not his forte or anything that interests him in any way whatsoever. So he decided to get something shiny from a jewelry store, as you do. And he found something that was ridiculously expensive, and he slightly lost his temper, and
A
was
watch, I believe.
a watch, and was not so politely asked to leave, which was fair enough because he had smashed a glass cabinet. And he then decided that his temper was getting out of hand and he really needed to go feed. So he went to the local hospital and found a patient who was deep in a coma, seemingly, and therefore would be unaffected by his clan bane of a harmful kiss, and then drained her dry and woke her up and alerted pretty much everyone in the ward that something was going on.
I'm not sure it was so much that she woke, although she did wake up as she died at the end of it, but it was more the fact that because you couldn't contain your hunger, it set off all the machines around her that started blaring loudly.
I remember her also screaming, though.
Oh,
there was
she did
definitely
as she was kind of dying, but that wouldn't have happened had you not drained her dry and the machines gone off, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I managed to escape cunningly, and unfortunately leaving the evidence of a drained body behind. Though not without, I think I did ended up doing in a hospital, and I think I ended up needing to do at least 1 blood surge and 2 willpower rerolls, despite not having any willpower. So of my 3 starting willpower, I now have 2 aggravated damage.
It's pretty fearsome stuff. So just to add, yeah, because Henry went there though because Henry feels like perhaps he was once a medical man or a scientific man or something of the sort, and it seemed appropriate. I don't think we've mentioned it, and it's worth mentioning that our characters have woken up from being in torpor, a long slumber since World War II. If you're wondering why they're confused about the modern context and stuff, but yeah, there we go. And I think we can jump in there. We had said that people could get 3 things done in this evening in order to kind of get the things they wanted to do done before we go to Queen Anne's party. Tommy has so far done nothing, as far as I'm aware. Maybe he still wants to do that. I don't know. Henry has 1 thing left to do, so make it count is all I'm saying. Alice technically has 2 things, but seems to be kind of satisfied. And Catherine's done. Catherine's done her 3 things: clothes shopping, artist shopping, poem not shopping. So let's. I mean, we have to pick up where we left off with Henry, don't we? We simply must. And before we do that, don't forget, everyone, this is the week you get your XP, and you also heal superficial willpower to the tune of either your composure or your resolve, whichever is higher. Yeah. So go ahead. Henry, what are you going to do?
Now seems like a very good time to get out of these still mud-caked clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go clothes shopping.
Sure.
And I'm not going to TK Maxx or Primark or whatever. I'm trying to go somewhere slightly nicer with the hope of also getting some sort of clothing-based gift as a last. You know that thing where you're about to visit someone, but you need to go to the shop. So you do what you need to do and then just grab something off the shelf as you're leaving and going, I'll pay for this.
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Don't know that.
Essentially doing that.
Sure. I think that's decent.
So like
yeah. All right. Well, why don't you give me then for finding the right place, because this is the thing. Catherine asked about Harrods and knew where Harrods was because Harrods was around in World War II, I think. I'm pretty sure it's been there like 100 years or something. So you didn't ask for anything like that. So I think you've got to try and find a place.
But I was also listening when he pointed out Harrods.
Okay. Are you going to go to Harrods? Or are you looking for something cheaper?
Oh, God. I have so little money.
I don't mean to rush you, but where you clothes shopping is not the agonizing decision it should be maybe in a vampire stream.
Let's go for somewhere slightly cheaper.
Okay.
Put
Well,
myself
in
in
that
the mercy
case,
of a roll.
yeah, in that case, if you can give me a, you know what, we could argue for intelligence here, but I think Henry's on edge here. So you choose either composure or wits.
Wits it is.
Plus streetwise.
Okay. So I'm actually rolling 5 dice, which isn't bad.
And it's not a
and-
set difficulty. You just tell me what you get.
And no hunger dice, because
You just drain someone dry. Did we give you a stain for that? Okay, that's fine.
so
Cool.
I rolled 3 successes.
Great. I think that's fantastic. I think you're walking down a fairly busy for the evening London street. You've already used Blush of Life, so we're all good with that. And you walk past, I don't know, like an all night, like not all night, but like a late shopping, Top Man or something. I don't know, like a kind of middle of the road, decently priced, and has some quite fancy clothes you could buy. Or at
Marks and
least
Spencer's.
polite ones. Marks and Spencer's, whatever. Again,
Other shops are available.
Other shops are available. Viewers outside the UK going, what? Yeah.
Marks and
something
Spencer's
like
also possibly around in the 40s, I think.
Quite possibly. What kind of clothes are you buying?
I'm buying probably 2 in case I fall on the Thames again. Nondescript, but smart-looking button-up shirts, black slacks, very
kind of
boring, essentially office clothes. Is what I
business
think of it.
casual
Yes,
sort of thing. Okay, that's fine.
and maybe a nice pashmina scarf or something.
Sure. Well, why don't you give me what role do you remember what role we made you do, Neill? Was it like something in finance?
I believe it was resolve and I think finance, yes.
Finance or etiquette.
Or etiquette.
Yeah, well, you know what? This is 2 separate things, so I think I'm going to actually ask you for 2 roles here, and neither of them has a target difficulty. We'll just go with what you roll for them. So why don't you give me a resolve and finance roll for your own clothes, and a resolve and etiquette roll for your gift for the Queen.
Eesh.
Not the Queen.
Okay, it's the same number for both. It's 3. Let's go for it. I've got chances of something there. 1 success for me.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to say in that case you don't find a bargain.
That's fine.
So a pair of slacks and a shirt, nothing's on offer. That costs you 80 quid.
Yeah,
and that's reasonable. It's probably actually under for London, but in that there London.
And for the Queen, 2 successes.
2 successes for the Queen, huzzah! So yeah, you find like a relatively nice sort of pashmina, and long, quite nice scarf. It's pretty goddamn standard. It's like a present you get your aunt for Christmas or something. It's not offensively bad, but neither is it. It's not what you'd immediately suspect an ageless hunter of the night to purchase for another ageless hunter of the night. But at least it's not nothing.
Yes.
And at least no one died here.
This time.
Yeah. You get those things, and you know what? For the pashmina, add another 40 onto that. So let's say you've spent £120.
Okay.
Cool.
So there we go. And I assume that's Henry's 3 things. So you probably have to head back to your hotel now, head bowed and weary. On the way, though, and you know what? I forgot to do this at the beginning, but just a wee, maybe a little content warning, a little trigger warning here. It's not going to be anything grotesque, but I'm about to allude to violence against animals. So if you don't like that kind of thing, maybe skip forward a couple of minutes, and then we'll all be good. So as Henry's walking back to the hotel, just around the corner from where it is, you hear the sound of kind of, perhaps like a cat fight starting, or some yowling in the middle distance. And all of a sudden, I think I described how the memoriams work for Justin. Like you're suddenly briefly in another place, in another time, and feeling things occurring to you as they do, as you're fairly sure it's reality. It's from your own past, and it just slams into you with an incredible force. It was only a cat. It wasn't even a very nice cat. It always hissed when it looked at you. But it seems several people had some sort of affection for the nasty creature, and so Father says you must be punished. It is unfair. He tells you that you need to study, and when you do, he and Mother look at you like you are not their son. How can you learn the way things work if you can't take them apart? It was a messy business, but an informative one. Yet that look of shame on your parents' faces sears your soul. I don't like it.
Man.
So
that is exactly what I expected it to be.
It's exactly what you expected.
I don't like it.
No, you're not meant to.
You're a terrible,
I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah, Henry's a terrible, terrible person, but we knew that already from last session. So there we go. Henry arrives back at the hotel. Let's see, and Catherine will already be there. Let's jump in with the others and see what they've been doing. So, Tommy, you didn't have anything you said you did last week, but do you want to? Is there something that Tommy wants to do?
Yeah, I mean, I was vaguely thinking. I've seen the map, and I've sort of idly looked over it that Shirazi initially laid out. And I think I just sort of initially I go wandering in a way that isn't doesn't have a specific aim, but then I realize I am actually heading towards some sort of war museum or something to do with maybe outdoor kind of museums or memorials or things like that. And that was my intent to go and think about things. Well, Pierre, you have literally done something I was going to do anyway with Tommy at some point during the session. So there we go. The Cenotaph is the main war memorial in London. Yes. Sure. I'm not entirely sure. Justin, you're a southerner. Where's the Cenotaph?
Oh God, I don't know where the Cenotaph is.
I mean, Neill, you spent a fair bit of time in London as well, right?
Yes, the Cenotaph.
Yes, we've all been to the Cenotaph all the time.
Classic place.
Sure. We don't need to be
Whitehall.
Whitehall. Okay, well that's real close to where you are.
So I was second ahead of me, Neill.
For reference, I think it's fair to say we're around kind of sort of Limehouse territory, which is interesting given that some time that's been spent with our current our other coterie there. But we're around the London Docklands. So if it's in Whitehall, it's fairly close by. Is the Cenotaph primarily World War I or World War II or both? Do we know?
It was unveiled in 1920, so I imagine it's probably been adapted since.
Adapted, but also, you'll certainly know where the Cenotaph is then, I think it's sure. Fair to say. So on the course of your wanderings through London, you're taking in all these odd sights and sounds and smells, things there is an unfamiliarity to them and definitely a sense of almost overload to what you're used to, but also that they also have this underpinning of real familiarity. This is still London and it's still recognizably your city. You reach the Cenotaph, and as you stand up to look at it and note the changes that have been made to it over the years, you see World War II and all the listings of the dead and things like that on it, and that kind of registers with you because the last time you were really aware, World War II was still ongoing, and you also experience memoriam, a memory slamming into you like a dream that you're reliving that is almost sharper and crisper than actual life. The memorial stone in front of you is covered in blood. You can't see the blood, but you know it's there. Blood you have shed, your own and that of others. The figures on the stone stand frozen in eternal strife, puppets to those who rule the constant conflict. You reach out to touch the stone, tracing the words carved there with your finger. Lest we forget. You cannot help but shed a tear for those you have lost and those who fell. Yeah. So
I think I come out of that and I'm touching the memorial or something, and I'm like, well, yeah.
Kind of reliving the moment again. Yeah. I probably, I don't know,
I think I probably people watch for a bit and then head back.
Sure.
Like I see somebody lighting a cigarette, and I'm like, it reminds like a lot of things are reminding me of stuff. But yeah, then head back.
Okay. Is there anything else Tommy wants to do this evening? Are we happy?
I think I'm happy with that.
Sure. Alice, is there anything else Alice wants to do with the evening? Or
could I also have picked up a colourful, not expensive dress at the supermarket, at the night market I was at?
Like something a bit more fancy than what you're wearing?
Yeah, mostly just striking. I don't really care if it's fancy.
Sure, but something that's quite vibrant and so forth.
Colourful,
I believe we said when you scavenged clothes, you were wearing like a t-shirt and jeans, I think.
Yeah,
something along those lines. So
pretty
something
much,
fairly... And a big jumper. I remember the big jumper. Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you give me just a resolve plus finance roll, just to find something decent. And if it's just from a supermarket, I'm not going to make you roll to find a supermarket. They're everywhere.
Or I was at the night market already, so I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, that'll do as well. Yeah, obviously at the night market as well.
Something like that would be quite finance, you say? Okay, so resolve then.
Yeah.
And do I have any? I've got a little bit of hunger right now. And
Bestial failure.
Well, I roll one success, but with potential for a bestial failure. That's not enough.
It's just scaling difficulty, so I won't worry about it.
Okay.
You find, I'll say it's given one success. I think it's unbelievable that you wouldn't find something vibrantly coloured in Camden Market. So instead, let's say you don't find you find something that's not cheap.
Fair enough.
And Camden Market actually isn't very cheap anyway. Well, for people who live outside London, I suppose. So you know what? I'm happy going with the same prices that Henry paid. So £40 for
that makes sense to me.
A brightly coloured. What colour? You know, let's say what kind of colour do you want?
Blue with like maybe fruit on it. Orange,
okay,
or yellow, something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's
striking.
Go for.
A striking design. Sure, sounds good. So with that in mind, you all return to the hotel, I think, and I think we've got the time. If anyone wants to have like some quick conversations or anything like that before we roll over to the following evening, then we could do that, or we can just go straight there. It's entirely up to you guys.
I'll just wish to ask everyone if they're happy with their arrangements for the next evening.
I look down at my clothes and make sure that there's not too much mud on them.
No, you didn't go into the river anyway, did you? So it's
so
good.
I'm good in my tracksuit,
I'm just don't you like my lovely floral arrangements? Isn't it completely devastating?
It's a little bit overblown for my taste.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. It's lovely.
Striking.
Well,
Henry,
as long as we don't embarrass ourselves. We do need to make a good impression, remember?
Certainly.
Are you all right, Henry? You look a bit pale.
I'm fine.
Well, I asked.
Okay. If there's no more role play conversation we want to have, let's just go for the next night. So I'm assuming the sleeping arrangements are the same, which would be Tommy and Henry stuffed into a wardrobe together. Alice and Catherine taking the bathroom. I believe you've drawn the big heavy hotel curtains over. You put the do not disturb sign on the door and barricaded the door. So you feel fairly safe, as safe as you can outside an actual haven, I suppose. And you surrender to the death-like slumber during the day once more. And you wake the following evening. Everyone give me a rouse check.
I succeeded.
Let's see how long my hunger zero path can last. Yes. I am still fully sated. This is the longest I've gone.
And even with what he did yesterday, Henry has raised hunger again. He's a hungry boy. He's come back to one life a hungry, morally reprehensible boy.
I believe in the current century it's pronounced hungry. Hungry
Well,
boy.
I think
Or
if
perhaps
you are
hungry.
I think that if you're a sandman or woman, then I just think that the blood is less good. It doesn't fill you the same way.
It certainly
It never
seems to be in our
lasts.
sessions. Yeah. So there we go. You rouse yourselves, and you think you've roused a little bit earlier this time, because if you remember last night, Shirazi woke you up. Obviously, kind of as the nights pass, your bodies are becoming more adapted to being out of torpor again. And this night, you wake up. All of you wake up, and about 10 minutes later, there's a knocking on the door.
I go up and look through the eye hole.
It is Shirazi.
Shirazi. I very subtly open the door and make sure that there's no one else. I check the angles. I open it up.
Sure. Well, I mean, hell, why not? Give me a. If you're that paranoid, I'm going to make you roll for it.
Brilliant.
So why don't you give me a? You're not having time to make a proper check, so give me a wits plus awareness roll, please.
That's 5 dice. Hunger 1. Is there a difficulty?
No, just sliding scale.
Okay, that's 2 successes.
Okay, I'm finding that more and more with checks in V5. I don't know whether that's maybe it's controversial to people, but I like it. Yeah, you're fairly sure that the corridor is, empty. Further down, you can see like a hotel employee pushing along a tray of drinks, but otherwise, it's fine.
Cool.
Shirazi's kind of looking around as you look around, and he says, "Oh, I'm quite sure. I don't think I was followed."
Yeah. Well, better safe than sorry.
Quite. He. Are you opening the door for him, I assume?
Yeah, I'm letting him in.
He walks in and kind of looks around at everyone and says, "Oh, well, don't we all look rather more smart than last night?" And then kind of briefly looks at Tommy and looks away again.
It's lovely for you to notice, darling. And are you coming as well? What's he dressed like?
He's dressed in a very similar style to what he's been in the past 2 nights. Again, a different one, though, a kind of retro 70s suit with a cravat. Perhaps it looks a little bit smarter than the previous ones, maybe a bit more dressy, but it's, he's fairly dressy anyway. So, and he's got kind of, a briefcase as he usually does with him.
And are you coming as well then, darling?
Oh, yes. I thought I might. People there to talk to, things to do. And I thought maybe I could be of use, perhaps. Should you need advice or someone to vouch for you? Yes, I thought I might.
Much appreciated.
Yes, although I have a slight suggestion, though. And please don't take any offense, dearie. But as we're new, perhaps we shouldn't go in together. We should go together and then you on your own.
Yes, whatever you like, of course.
Just so they don't know.
Yes. I can see how that might be useful. So, well, if you like, I could kind of looks at his watch. I could book a taxi for yourselves and for myself, and perhaps wait 20 minutes in the taxi myself, and then I'll definitely arrive after you.
That sounds wonderful. Wonderful.
He kind of steps over to one side of the room and starts calling on his phone. As he does that, is there any kind of interaction you guys want to have?
Are you sure we don't want to be introduced?
Well, we already have. But I, at least, already have someone who dislikes me. We wouldn't, if he is able to find something out we're not.
We're perfectly capable of introducing ourselves.
Exactly. We must be seen to be independent kindred. We cannot be seen to be minions or fledglings. No,
we're not.
We are.
We're not guests in London. We are residents who are returning after a time of absence.
Well said, Alice. Well said.
Okay.
Shirazi kind of comes off his phone and says, "Yes, well, there we go. The taxi is waiting for you outside. might be a little bit different from a black cab, but yes, that should be waiting for you now, and you can head off to the Shard.
I'm going to use Blush of Life.
Yes.
Hmm.
We're gonna find out.
I am definitely thinking, just as a prelude to you guys, I'm thinking of slightly reconfiguring how Blush of Life works for the ongoing campaign, and therefore also this, because I think it's a bit too harsh as it is in terms of how it works. So I'm pondering, but
Well,
for
that's
now.
exciting.
Fantastic.
Say that for the end of
teaser.
the session, then.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask Shirazi, is the cab one of ours?
Oh, no, just a mortal organization.
Okay. Right. I'll use Blush of Life as well.
I used Blush of Life and failed the rouse check. I've put the dice in timeout. I'm not going to use it anymore.
You see, you should drain. I'm not going to finish that sentence, but
Don't.
Yeah. Okay.
So, we head downstairs out of the hotel. The cab is there waiting. It is, in fact, a black cab, which makes sense because there are 4 of you. So, yeah. And there may well only be black cabs in London. I don't know. Probably not, right?
There's Ubers.
Yeah. It's not an Uber.
2012?
I don't think Shirazi
if there was a
uses
city
Ubers.
that had them in 2012,
Yeah.
then maybe it was London. I don't know.
I don't think Shirazi uses Uber. So, yeah, he's called this for you. You get in, and it's quite a swift drive, kind of across the river to where the Shard is. It's still very close to the centre of London. And as you kind of drive through the London streets, you can see it a fair way off. It is a very large building. In 2012, it's only really quite recently opened in 2012. And while the picture we're going to use is actually of the opening night and therefore a bit more lit up than usual, I think Queen Anne will perhaps have made it a bit more, generously lit up than perhaps it would be on a normal night. So Steve, why don't you give us that image of the Shard, please? There we go. So you are driven up to just outside it. You can see that a lot of the ground floors are kind of still open. There's a great deal of space that hasn't been occupied yet in the Shard because it's so recently opened. But you can see a dotting of occasional kind of stores and restaurants that seem to still be open. And there are people walking around as well because the ground floors are effectively, a very large shopping centre with added restaurants and some office space and stuff like that in as well. And outside the main doors to the Shard is standing your artist. Neill, did we name the artist?
I don't believe we did. I don't have it written down anyway, which
Well,
may be a sign of how much I'm getting into vampire character.
Yeah. Let's use a random. Whoa, that is a hell of a name.
Arturo.
This is wow. Okay.
Guillermo del
This
Toro.
this name generator ain't a thing.
Reggie.
Let's Oh, here we go. This will do.
John, Matt, Pierre, Justin, Neill.
Oh,
Is that the
perfect.
Oh my word!
That's a classic name.
I've literally
Genghis.
just found.
Load in.
I've literally just found a name generator that you have to fill in like an insane amount of details in order to get a
Credit card information.
Yeah.
Matt, are you telling me that this
Beautiful.
character
Here we go.
is not the central component of this campaign and that you have named him hundreds of times?
I don't know what you mean. The individual that you have hired for this is called Samuel Spencer. They're just Samuel, that's fine. He steps forward as you get out of the cab and kind of smiles and says, "Oh, I half thought you might not be coming." He's got a very London boho appearance to him. He's kind of in basically like paint splashed overalls and with a white t-shirt underneath it.
Splendid. It's lovely to see you. And I'll turn on Orr and kiss him on the cheek and say, just this way and your project awaits, dear.
He kind of nods and says, wow, okay. He looks
Loop my arm in his.
nervous but very impressed. So you walk in to the ground floor of the Shard, and essentially, as I say, anyone can walk into these retail areas on the ground floors, even though most of the shops are shut. So I believe the information you were given is that the way into the party was marked by a prominent symbol of the Camarilla. So as you're walking through these, like the aisles and the open areas of the ground floors of the Shard, why doesn't everyone give me a wits plus awareness roll, please? And there's successes at difficulty 3 and 4, so we'll see what comes of them.
I got 3 successes, rolling a dice pool of 5.
I made 1 success with 3.
Same here, 1 with 3.
Oh, 3 successes with 4.
I miss Alex.
So 2 people got 3s then. So that was Tommy and Henry, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a bit of time as you're walking through, and you have to kind of double back on yourself. Samuel looks a bit confused that you don't seem to know where this party is, but eventually, as you're walking around, you do spot what appears to be a different lift elevator to what everyone else seems to be using. It's behind a set of glass doors and kind of large glass panes, and above it, in either maybe gold, but obviously most likely gold paint, has been stenciled above the doorway the symbol of a scepter. A scepter is the symbol of Clan Ventru.
I pointed out if Henry doesn't, and start walking towards it.
Sure. As you walk up, you can see that behind the glass door, about 6 individuals, all quite well dressed and very sort of expensive but functional suits. And as you get close to the glass door, you can see all of them are wearing gold scepter pins on their lapels.
Okay. I walk up to them and try and pass towards the lift.
One of them steps forward as you do so. Once you're now in, you can see that there are basically metal detector things there, and one of them steps forward and says, "1 second, sir. I think we will just need to, if you could display your credentials, please."
I don't think that's necessary, and I maintain eye contact with him.
I'm afraid it very much is, sir. We don't want anyone getting in who isn't meant to be here.
Fine. And then I indicate to Catherine, since I have no credentials on me, certainly.
Just look at him.
I untangle myself and say, "Please stay here a moment, dear," and walk closer so that he can't see me, and just flash my fangs, as apparently Tommy is too proud.
Thank you.
Also,
now,
and I'll lean forward slightly, is there anywhere... I have brought a guest who does not have credentials. Where can I leave him? He is a gift.
Oh, then they will perhaps ascend in the lift with you, miss. And once you're at the top, just please inform Lady Churchill that he is to be taken to one side.
Thank you, dearie.
Please proceed through the metal detectors.
Head on through.
Sure. No one has any.
Maybe
certainly, no one has any weapons, right?
I have a big lighter in one of my pockets.
Sure. So I believe they'll still go off because I'm assuming you're carrying your mobile phones.
Yep.
Oh,
I guess so.
yes.
Okay. As you go through, another individual steps forward and says, "Please," and holds a tray forward. Your mobile phones, if you would.
I take mine out, put it in the thing.
Thank you. Can't be too careful at the moment.
I'll beckon to my companion and say,
He goes, "Oh, no, I don't have a mobile phone. They rot your brain."
I mean, I have no basis to know if that's true or false, and I don't care because I don't have a brain, but it's dead.
Sure.
So
I will look at my phone slightly confusedly at that, but hand it over.
Sure.
Tommy, do you think you'd have consented earlier to hold my phone, given that this dress has no pockets?
Yes, of course.
Fantastic.
Sure. Does anyone else think they have anything metal that could have set it off, or probably not?
Other than
so
coins, but
and it's it's fancy metal they're looking at what you're holding, so it's not entirely they're not going to ask you to give in a ring or whatever.
can I assume that actually, because that's a good point, can I assume as part of the dress buying expedition that I also bought some very small little purse thing that I'm holding?
Yeah,
and I'll
sure.
just hand all of that over rather than messing about.
Sure, that's fine. So they kind of wave you through. They seem perfectly happy with this. And one of them kind of says, send it down into a kind of walkie-talkie they have pinned to their front. And you can see that, the numbers, the digital numbers above the elevator are kind of going down as the lift drops to your floor. You step in alongside Samuel and look around. The ghouls are just kind of watching you step in there yourself. There is only one button in the elevator.
I will press it.
Okay. The elevator, which has a kind of back panel of glass, starts rising up, and you can kind of look around and see through it the interior of the shard kind of dropping away below you, and after a while giving way to just floor after floor passing by. The numbers that read on the interior of the elevator start slowing when you hit 60, and when you hit 66 the elevator door opens, and it opens onto a relatively plush but small chamber that has sort of waiting sort of furniture on either side of it that looks like kind of like only a slightly less fancy version of like a shalong or a very expensive settee. And stood in the center of the room is a tall and elegant black woman dressed in very expensive and stylish designer clothes. She's holding a leather folder in front of her like a weapon.
I will step forward. Churchill, I assume?
She blinks slightly at you saying this and says, "Yes. Hello, Catherine."
Lovely to meet you. These are my companions, Tommy, Henry, Alice.
She looks around and says, yes, it must be unusual to be coming to a soiree like this without Angelique." And goes down to make notes on her, on a piece of paper on a folder. Catherine does not notice this because Catherine is undergoing memoriam. So you can't believe she is gone. You were meant to have years together, centuries even, perhaps eternity. It had taken hours to dig through the rubble, the blood powering your limbs to throw aside stone after stone. To hell with the masquerade, you needed to find her. Then all of a sudden, there she was, your lovely Angelique, lying in the dirt of the shattered basement, broken and twisted. Her eyes were staring into oblivion, her body unnaturally bent and crushed. But it seemed she was alive somehow, deep inside. You promised eternity to each other. Now you can only wonder if you will spend it by her silent bedside. The other three of you can see that Catherine is definitely going through something, and perhaps Tommy and no, all of you have experienced Memoriam, haven't you? So it's yes.
I probably would, if possible, try and whisk Catherine away almost immediately, realizing what's happening. If I would realize what's happening, and say, and kind of like start commenting on the room, like, isn't this just lovely, Catherine? Kind of in a kind of distracted kind of.
I think, like, I mean, when you say what's happening, it is just a momentary thing. You will realize that Catherine is somewhat lost in memory for a second.
Sure.
But you can try.
But it's a vulnerable moment, and there's no need for Catherine to share it necessarily with anyone else outside of the coterie.
Sure. I think you can do that. I don't think Catherine will be particularly resistant for a moment while this washes over her. And obviously, if we were in a kind of normal setting and it was a thing that Lady Churchill had said, it is entirely possible I'd be asking for things like frenzy rolls and stuff like that. But I think under the circumstances of you not being aware until it's washed over you, I think that will be more overwhelming to you than the kind of little needled insult. So I don't think we'll do anything like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think like the context of knowing the formula of a Elysium veiled insult / jibe, it would almost, even if I don't understand it, I think Alice would understand that this is a situation that we can pull Catherine away from and distract from.
Sure.
Or move the glaze over.
So while Alice and Catherine do that, Lady Churchill looks over at Henry and Tommy and says, well, you are all welcomed to Queen Anne's party, and we're glad you could take up the invitation. Perhaps you could let us know what gifts you have brought, and if you pass them along to me, I will see that they are placed in an appropriate location for the Queen to peruse later.
Absolutely.
Well, I have brought this. I'll present the pashmina, and Catherine has brought this young gentleman who I believe has somewhere else to go.
Oh, yes, how delightful. She reaches out on a nearby table and lifts up and tinkles a little bell, and a large ghoul in identical kind of suit and scepter pin rounds the corner and starts walking towards Samuel. Catherine.
Have I come to at this point?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I will lean in, whilst it's happening, I'll lean in quickly to Alice and thank her, because I'm presuming I have enough awareness to know that I've been led away, and say, he's an artist to paint a portrait. Nothing before that.
Churchill nods at this and indicates to the ghoul, who steps forward and kind of takes Samuel not unkindly by the shoulders, and he turns around and mouths towards you. And then and is taken away.
It's a lot less sinister.
Yeah, here's a genuine question, and I think you could definitely argue back on this. One of the tenets of our chronicle is do no malice. Do we think that's a stain? Because you do not know what Queen Anne is going to do with this very young, very naive individual.
Equally, I have said no. He's an artist to paint a portrait.
Nothing before that.
Because I don't want him taken away to a room, and I can't say don't kill him in public.
Sure, yeah.
And my intent is to bring him, have him do a portrait, and then he might be useful in future. So my intent is not to bring him here to be killed, if that sure thing.
But
so how about we run with no stains right now, and if somehow you find out later that he has come to horrible harm, then we'll think about bringing him in. Yeah.
I mean, is there a question about, because you get a stain for ghouling someone, so is there a question about introducing someone to
I mean, we don't know that will happen either, right? So let's see what happens. Vampires don't just ghoul people willy-nilly. Well, I'm sure they do in certain campaigns, but so Queen Anne certainly does not.
Our Churchill said Churchill led Samuel away.
Well, she brought a ghoul into
yeah. Are Churchill's hands currently unoccupied apart from her folder?
Yes.
Then I'm going to dump the vase into it and say, "This is for Queen Anne. I'm sure you could find a prominent place for it. I only wish that it was summer and I could have picked them myself."
Churchill kind of looks down at the arrangement and says, "Oh, how lovely," and kind of places over on one side on the table. And then I think she hasn't got round to taking the pashmina off Henry yet, and she takes that and glances at it very briefly and says, "Oh, how wonderful," and places it on the table. And then says, "And obviously the young man was from Catherine." A very warm smile towards you. And Tommy, is it?
Yes. My gift is an offer of service, so I'm not sure how to give that.
She tilts her head and says, "How interesting. What services can you provide?"
Well, I am particularly adept at warfare, and there is a war coming.
Her eyebrow kind of ticks up slightly, and she says, "Well, very well, I will write it down here. A boon of military service. Fascinating. So I believe that is everything."
Yes.
Yes.
Neill, are you intentionally holding the poem back?
Yes.
Sure, that's fine.
That's something I present rather than give, and only
Absolutely.
if it's received badly.
No problem. I just wanted to check. So as you all kind of make it clear that that's everything, Lady Churchill kind of steps to one side and gestures behind her to kind of it's not a closed doorway, it's like a little passageway leading out of the room that then seems to turn to the left, and says, "Very well then, if you would care to walk down there, you will reach the party area. I of course have to emphasize to you, this is considered Elysium, so all the usual rules will apply." You can kind of hear music and hubbub going on down that passageway.
I'll have turned. Can we assume that I would have assumed that I would have turned or off in between the walk?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Okay. She stands there waiting for you to leave. Essentially, you walk past her and round and into a rather striking area. The view as you step out of the passageway is spectacular. All of London is laid out before you, undoubtedly intended to grant a sensation of power and supremacy. The 66th and 67th floors have been merged to create a large atrium surrounded by shaded glass. Elegant glass staircases lead to several different mezzanine levels at different heights, giving the impression of an Escher illustration. Kindred have congregated in many different groups across these levels to enjoy the view and the easy socializing. A number of doors lead to meeting rooms and private chambers. While these do not seem off limits, the party is clearly happening in the open area. Something I probably should have said. Just before you left, Churchill retconned and said she told you that your names would be called when your audience with the Queen was available.
Great.
So in front of you, you have a whole area spread out in front of you. There are quite a few noticeable more Ventru ghouls around with the suits and the pins, a great scattering of kindred. There's also a little area over on the side where there are a few large couches, and on the couches seem to be quite moderately pale individuals hooked up with cannula, and ghouls are next to them tapping them for blood, which they're letting out into wine glasses as people approach. There seem to be a scattering of very different kinds of individuals. They also appear to be either passed out or so drugged up as to make no difference.
Brill.
Go ahead.
My guest has not been deposited there, has he?
No.
Yeah, just immediately.
Just to make sure.
Just the ghoul pulled him into a room, slit his throat, and emptied it into a vat. No,
I think I go up to Alice and just the group in general and ask, so do we have an order of operations?
I think the plan is to have some fun. And with that, I might tap Tommy and kind of go signal to Catherine, glass? You want a glass? I'm getting one.
Yes, please. That would be lovely.
That's what I'm going to go do.
Sure. You walk up to. I mean, I imagine Catherine will need to pick someone.
I'm not going to drink it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So, Alice, you go over. A ghoul steps forward. A more slight ghoul, kind of evidently not there for kind of protection and security. And he steps forward, a kind of old, craggy look, bald head, kind of old, very lined white guy, and says, "Madam," and just like it's a buffet. Mm-hmm. And gestures at the people. There's all kinds of different kinds of people arranged on the sofas. None of them look rough and terribly lower class. But there's definitely, there's young people. There's like a girl who's dressed in almost up like a punk style. A variation of people.
Just trying to remember what blood type is associated with blood sorcery.
Sanguine, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I think you're right. Now sanguine's like in a. Is that the happy horny one?
I think so. Yeah. Let me just get my cheat sheet up just to make sure, because I do maintain a cheat sheet for these things. So yeah, sanguine is blood sorcery, and sanguine is indeed horny, happy, addicted, active, flighty, enthusiastic. Yeah.
That I might. Is there any one of them who are particularly passionate? I'm asking them if they've got any idea about that kind of thing. Because if this is a thing, then maybe ghouls know a bit about it. Maybe there's a language for describing that kind of blood preference.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can arrange something like that. He turns around and just kind of, he looks through some notes and then says, "Oh, you know what? I think we may have someone coming out now who may be a good match for you." And he turns around, and one of the individuals is kind of being lifted off the couch. They're not dead, but they're very pale, and they're just being led out. And he turns and says, "We don't want to make any mess, obviously. So we regularly change them over." It's a conversation. It's as if you've gone to an expensive shop, and he's kind of explaining the process.
I might legitimately ask, was he good? Did it well received?
Oh, very, very, very in demand. But we have some good sources here. Oh yes, thank you. And an individual is led out. An individual is led out of a door to the side. They're kind of held up because they are obviously heavily drugged, and they're carried out by two ghouls and accompanied by another individual. The person they're bringing out is a young white woman dressed in a very expensive-looking cocktail dress with kind of bobbed hair, kind of very almost flapper-looking individual, obviously quite maybe rich.
Sure.
And he's led out. And there's an individual by the side of the ghouls, kind of directing them to, be careful. She's an excellent source, and I don't want to lose her. The individual is dressed in a deep purple suit and has a shock of pale blonde hair. In fact, although I didn't mention it to Steve, we could even have a picture of him.
Ooh.
Because I don't know if anyone's made the link yet, but can we have a picture of Arthur up, please?
Wait a second.
Any second.
It's coming.
It's fine. I forgot to prep Steve with this. And I forgot to prep Steve with this because I literally just made it up 5 minutes ago that I was going to do it. So
that's lovely.
That's a good reason.
As an Arthur R. Arthur.
Yeah, it literally just hit me like a lightning bolt. Why wouldn't the characters from the other coterie be here? Or some of them, anyway.
That is
like
hilarious.
Arthur would certainly be here as
Yeah.
a Ventru. So there we go. And that
You-
individual kind of escorts the ghouls and the vessel out and makes sure she's seated and kind of stands up, looks around, and kind of looks at the party with an expression that clearly he would rather be out in the party than helping this process happen.
he's still very, very, very junior in his apprenticeship.
Very, very
in the
junior.
fold,
Yeah.
so,
What year was Arthur embraced, John?
So I sort of had it in my head that he was embraced after he left London. So he'd still be a ghoul at this point. But
that's fine. He can still be a ghoul. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
So yeah, and then the three ghouls connect the vessel up to a cannula and then head back through the door. The slightly more wizened looking ghoul bends over, taps two glasses of blood and hands them to Alice.
Thanks
Says,
so much.
Please enjoy.
Absolutely. And with that, I'll return. I'll return, but my eyes are looking for where the bustle of the party is. And after dropping the glass on Catherine, my intention would be to soon head towards where the most action is.
Absolutely.
Ditto. That's what I would need the glass for.
Absolutely. So, what is Catherine's feeding restriction? Just out of interest, I know you're not drinking it, but just out of interest, Neill.
I believe it's the rich. Yes.
Okay. And it's safe to say that Ventral can immediately tell from the scent of something if it complies with a feeding restriction, right?
I think
If the blood is right there in the glass in front of them.
For vessels, it would be there's a hard difficulty roll for its difficulty 4.
Oh, okay.
I think it's reasonable to assume that in Elysium you wouldn't ask, so a ghoul might just say from a rich
Sure.
or from a whatever defining quality.
Yeah, absolutely. But because you weren't there to ask that question, because that's when I wrote it. But I'm happy you making that roll. And you know what? I'll actually knock the difficulty down because I think the blood, being able to scent the blood is easier than the individual. I know you're not intending to drink it, but I just want you to know. That's all. What is the roll out of interest?
It's resolve plus awareness, i.e. resolve, difficulty 4.
But we'll knock it down to 3 because the blood is actually there in front of you rather than the person.
So that's 2 dice I'm rolling.
Okay.
1 success.
Okay. Yeah. You. It smells nice, but you're not sure if it's your to your taste precisely. So I believe we were talking about trying to look around at where the epicenter of this party was. Anyone who is doing that, feel free to give me a resolve plus etiquette roll.
Goodness me!
I know Catherine is doing it, but if anyone else,
I have a slightly different plan.
Sure, and let's get to you guys and what you're doing in a second.
It's always good to start a fight.
It doesn't seem like Tommy and Henry's thing, perhaps, to be doing that.
No.
3 successes.
0 successes on 5 dice. So I'm rolling well on rouse checks, but badly on anything to do with my 103 dice.
Sure.
Well, actually achieving your goals.
So yeah, Catherine, the perhaps it's the recent memoriam you've gone under, but the swirl of the party is kind of unclear to you. You feel perhaps a bit flustered and on the back foot. Alice, however, you note that the first thing that you note is there's a lot of very separate kindred in this whole wide area, a lot of different pockets of them. At first glance, some of it seems according to clan, but not a huge amount. What you do note is that if you are going to typify kindred, there aren't many kindred here in extremely ostentatious clothing and very, very expensive clothing. And you note a few individuals who are, and also a few individuals who move through the crowd with a sense of power and grace that you would associate with elders, and they are going into a separate room that's up a glass staircase and off. If you had to guess, you'd say that that's where perhaps the elders are going, and it's also maybe where a great number of maybe Ventru are going. It does have 2 ghouls stood at either side of it who definitely look like they know who should be in there and who shouldn't. But in the area you are, there's no kind of epicenter. Everything is just a sprawling pockets
where,
of people.
Where looks like the funnest place to be, which is what Alice wants to go to.
Sure.
Like, is there like music somewhere or performance, or is there like a place where everyone is laughing?
There is no performance, but there is music that's playing that's sort of quite an elegant, sort of maybe modern classical sort of piece that's playing, and there's no kind of one specific place where everyone is sort of being louder than any other, but there is nearby you a kind of group who are laughing gently and kind of seem to be conversing with a certain degree of pleasantness with each other. Yeah, sure.
Sure. Then I will go over. I'll tell Catherine I'm heading over, but I will point out to her, like kind of like with a glance, the room where the elders are going.
Sure.
And you know where to find me if you want to join me. And then
yes, would you mind? I'm feeling a bit out of sorts. And I'll gesture over.
Yeah.
So, Tommy, Henry, what? And I don't know if you guys are sticking together, but Tommy said he had an idea of what he's looking for. So why don't we go with Tommy for a second?
Yeah, well, my initial reaction, I think, is to try to scope out the security in this room to see, are there people standing, are there ghouls standing to the side? The other thing I was sort of vaguely thinking about was if there were any windows that I thought might be like firing lines or anything like that. Like, that's my immediate reaction to a party.
Sure.
The loud noise is actually kind of freaking me out a little bit, and I'm reverting back to older behaviors.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you give me then a resolve plus firearms roll for a kind of general awareness of, as you say, the security and
who's watching, who seems
watching,
to be partying, and who's like
how defensible this place is, that kind of thing. And while you make that roll, let's ask Henry what he's doing.
I was going to get a drink because I wasn't brought one.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to. I think Tommy is probably a better place to do this, so I'm going to lean into Tommy if he isn't looking too distracted.
As he's scoping.
Yeah, I'm looking around.
Which is a good time to do it, and say, one of our objects is with one of your people.
Noted. I'll see if I can find them. The word, right?
That's it.
Okay. Are you all right on your own?
Are you?
Fair. And then, like, I don't know, I walk off trying to.
Sure. Okay. How did that roll go?
I got 3 successes after a willpower reroll.
Okay. There is a lot of security here, and they are all armed. You can see kind of bulges under their suits. It's difficult to get at a first glance, but you'd guess there's at least 30 armed security guards around here, all posted in pretty logical places. As for whether the place is defensible, you can see almost everywhere from everywhere else because almost everything is glass. The entire floor is ringed in shaded glass. There is no wall between you and the outside, if you see what I mean. And almost everything else is made of glass apart from the actual floors. So, and some partition walls seem to be as well. Of particular note, the door where the elders are going in is a wall. You cannot see beyond that point.
Are there kindred? Like, are all of the guards? Ghouls, or are they?
I mean, you can't tell that without the correct level of auspex and stuff like that.
Fair enough.
They're all hefty people wearing business suits and Ventru lapel pins.
Okay.
And also there are people being cannulaed blood out of them, and you'd hope they're all ghouls. Yeah. Otherwise, a couple of them might start questioning what's happening. So yes.
Yeah. Well, in that case, okay. In that case, if I can't see anyone who actually, yeah, is there? I don't know if this is valid, but is there anyone who seems to be of a military bent who is not a guard, right? Who like perhaps is like me, but also just like I guess, can I see any Nosferatu? Can I see the people I'm looking for?
So you're looking for people who look kind of military, and you're looking for other Nosferatu. Yeah, I think that's fine. Why don't you give me? I think that's going to be a good old standard roll of. You know what? The people are moving around so much. I think it's difficult to make a resolve roll. So you give me a wits plus awareness roll on that, and as you do that, let's. So I don't think we've really fully grasped what is Henry doing.
I'm going to get a drink, and then I'm going to. Do you want to know my action after that, or?
No, let's hop back to you after that. Do you have any preferences on drink?
No.
That's fine. Anyone who does have a drink and actually drinks that drink can feel free to knock their hunger down by 1.
Boom.
So let's, in that case, you made the roll with 3. That's cool. Let's hop back to you in a bit. Let's go down to Alice and Catherine, and they're walking over to this group of individuals. It's a fairly large group of kindred. There's about 10 or 12 of them stood round idly talking and drinking, and they seem to be getting on fairly well. Alice, you kind of walk into the group, and next to you is Catherine. And
is that right? I thought Catherine was hanging you back.
Oh, I could be wrong.
No, I was following you.
Oh, good. Okay, sure.
Next to you is a woman who looks to be. I actually have had her description sheet before because reasons. 1 second. No, never mind. She's looks to be a youngish woman, quite short and quite a broad build, long dark hair, and perhaps of maybe of Middle Eastern heritage. She glances over at you as you walk into the group and smiles genially. You get the sense perhaps that it's not impossible for a vampire to get drunk, but it's more common for a vampire to affect being drunk. And she offers you a hand, quite slightly boozily, and says, "Oh, hello. Have we met?"
It's quite possible. I've been away for some time. I'm Alice. Catherine and I have been gone for a few decades.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if we will have then. My name's Rosa Barwi.
Oh, sorry. It's so difficult sometimes to guess someone's age, you know? Everyone looks so young. Well, it's lovely to meet you, Rose. How is the evening? You know, just a few pleasant. For now, I think I'm still trying to. I'm playing quite defensively. I want to kind of work out what the mood of the group is that we've kind of walked into, and kind of see how I can integrate myself into it. And then I think, like, generally, Alice is going to be looking to see if they can identify another Tremere, but otherwise, because there's lots to talk about.
Sure.
Yeah, that's going to be what I'm doing, basically.
Absolutely. So let's see how well you're mingling, shall we? So do you want to give me a your choice of social stat? I think all 3 of them could apply, plus etiquette, please.
Okay, that's 2 dice.
While you do that, what's Catherine doing?
I will be doing a quieter version of that, observing what Alice is doing, and either chipping in or just filing away and trying to get information.
Sure. Are you looking for anything in particular?
I'm looking for anything about was it Angelique? If anything vaguely that is mentioned, if there's anything in particular mentioned about Churchill or the room where Venture may be going.
Sure,
That's
absolutely. Well, why don't you make the same roll for me then? So any social stat plus etiquette, and obviously if you're using, you can use or to add to it should you wish.
In Elysium?
I think
it's I think it's too much, because they will know.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, they do actually get a roll per they know, but even so.
I did a willpower reroll to get 2 successes with a messy critical.
Okay, that's cool. We'll come back to that then.
Wait, 2 successes with a messy critical?
Or is a messy critical only when you have other crit?
You have to have a critical to have a messy critical.
Did you roll 2 10s?
No, I didn't roll 2 10s, so it's just 2 successes.
Critical.
That's my bad. I'm still getting used to my brain.
I think this is quite important. First impressions. So I'm going to use a blood surge on this and charisma plus etiquette, which is 8 dice. And I passed my rouse check. 1, 2, 3, 5 successes.
Okay, great. So that's 2 successes for Alice, and we'll deal with that first. So I believe what you were looking for is essentially making a decent impression and trying to find other Tremere. So you definitely make a decent but kind of non-notable impression, if you see what I mean.
That's fine with me.
And you just mildly talk to people for about an hour or so in this little group. They seem to be perfectly fine. There's a lot of talk of social matters and London politics that you have no idea. You recognize a few names here and there, or at least they just resonate with you. Like, I'm pretty sure I might start to remember who that person is if I thought about it. But a lot of the talk is also about Queen Anne, and a lot of the talk is also about rumors of hunters and the Second Inquisition. You also hear a rumor, and you have no idea of the veracity of it. That someone says that the Tremere are looking to take London from Queen Anne. Since Mithras' death, they have been gradually growing their power, and they are behind the hunter attacks as a ploy to weaken Queen Anne. This is, however, whether or not this is true, this is a useful conversation to overhear, because as they start talking about Clan Tremere, they indicate someone in another group of people. She is a young woman wearing a hijab and sort of casual, almost studentish clothes, and is quite calmly talking to someone else. So presumably they are Tremere. As for Catherine, with the 5 successes you got, I think we can more than adequately. Could you quickly remind me exactly what you were looking for? I know you were looking to talk to someone about the room of elders, but what else were you looking for specifically?
And Angelique, and just conversation about Churchill in particular.
Sure.
But yeah, amongst just general listening, obviously. But those are 3 things I was steering conversations towards. Absolutely.
And you talk to 2 people who are quite helpful with this. You talk to Rosa Bowie, who it emerges quite quickly in the conversation is the child of Regina Blake, someone who the name sparks something in you. And Rose is quite gleeful in talking about Churchill, who seems to be her sire, Regina, used to be the kind of master of Elysium, someone who'd arrange these events and control them and decide the setting for them and things like that. And Lady Churchill appears to have taken that role off Regina over the course of the last couple of years. Not officially, but Blake has essentially stopped being invited to things. And you're not entirely sure whether Rose disapproves of this or is taking a certain amount of glee in her sire's misfortune. But she's certainly excited to talk about it. This conversation goes on for a while. You don't hear any, you kind of don't overhear or manage to extract any further mention of Angelique or what you know this person was of desperate importance to you, but you don't manage to figure anything else out other than that. You do, however, find yourself in a conversation with an individual who keeps from the group, who has mostly stayed silent and keeps glaring up at that doorway with the occasional elder going into it. They are quite a handsome man, maybe in their mid-40s, very kind of like fashionable but conservative, cropped kind of comb-over hair, very expensive-looking suit, but perhaps a little bit tawdrily expensive, a little bit showy, very, very glistening gold Rolex watch. And you find yourself stood kind of like next to them with an opportunity to talk to them if you want. They certainly seem to be occupied with the notion of that doorway.
Then I'll introduce myself. I see you're interested in greater things tonight.
He kind of flashes a glance at you, and you can see him reading you to see if he's being mocked. And he evidently doesn't find anything like that in your face, and says, "I suppose I am." He sticks his hand out. Mears.
I will offer my hand. Catherine.
It looks like some of us aren't considered important enough yet to be attending the grown-ups party.
It does, doesn't it? Do you know, and this is, I apologize for being so gauche on an evening like this, but do you know how they've decided? I have only just returned to London myself, you see.
Well, you have to be in the bloody inner circle here, don't you, I suppose? And for whatever reason, we don't seem to have qualified.
Was ever thus.
I haven't seen you around before.
Yes, as I said, I have been gone from London for some time. I was last here in Second World War, I think it's called.
He's kind of nodding and kind of making noise. You can tell he's barely listening to you as he sips from blood and kind of is laser locked on that doorway.
Is there anyone in particular you're looking for?
No.
Or just...
No, I suppose not. But it might be... where's that bloody sewer rat gone? Might be nice to get a word in Anasof's ear. I'm sure he could do something. He's all right for someone who, lives in the filth.
Does this guy look like Henry Mears?
Well, he has already introduced himself as Mears, so
sorry,
yes, he does look very much like Henry Mears.
I'm trying really hard to be nice to him, given that Catherine doesn't have a reason so far
Yes.
to strongly dislike him. Well, perhaps I could accompany you, if a lady could impose, for you to introduce me around.
Yes, strength in numbers and all that. Yes,
Yeah,
I
exactly, my dear.
see.
I'll offer a arm.
He takes it and goes, "Oh, enchanting," and turns around and kind of you basically go through the party looking for Anasof, another name that kind of just something in the back of your brain springs to life. And while we're doing that, let's go back to Henry a second, because I feel like Henry hasn't had too much to do here. What is Henry now doing? Alice and Catherine and Tommy have all walked off in separate directions. After initially carousing near each other, have all gone in separate directions.
Well, the interaction between Catherine and Churchill and the dropping of the name Angelique earlier got Henry thinking. Henry is basically going to wander around and try and see if anyone is glancing at him with a sign of recognition. Because we may have had pre-existing relationships in the city before we went into Torpor. And if I did, this is a way to find it.
Sure. Yes. I think it's also worth noting as well that, after you've woken up, information about kindred society has flooded back to you. Henry is certainly aware that he is the only member of the coterie who is not actually in a clan that is of the Camarilla.
Yes.
And, in your day, that didn't matter so much because Mithras kind of didn't care about the Camarilla. This was labeled a Camarilla gathering. So I would say maybe an amount of wariness on Henry's behalf. Maybe?
That is why Henry is not approaching anyone.
Sure. Okay. Well then, let's go with a roll for that of resolve plus insight. I think that's a decent roll, isn't it?
It probably is, but I'm not very good at that.
You can take etiquette instead if you want, if that helps.
That is better. I was also planning on using heightened senses. I don't know if that would factor into this in any way, because the rules say it adds to perception rolls, but perception isn't a skill on the sheet.
Is that what it actually says in V5?
I think so, because I copied this out of the V5 book.
Okay, let's.
Neill, you use it almost all of the time.
Yeah, you add it to perception rolls, but they're very definitely physical. One's based on very tight physical perception, so it's deliberately left open as to whether that is awareness, investigation, streetwise. It's deliberately narratively vague, so you can use it or not use it as appropriate.
I think it's appropriate here. It's certainly a busy place, but it's not overloading with its music and its noise. So I think that's fine. It's a prolonged thing. I think you'd be fine with it.
So I will do a roll to see whether I successfully trigger it. Which is wits plus resolve, 4 dice, and critical with 5 successes. So I definitely
nice.
Why couldn't I roll that for my next roll?
Absolutely.
And it was, do you say resolve plus etiquette?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be 3 plus my auspex, which is 5. Hunger.
Hang on. So what did you get the critical for? Sorry, I'm confused.
For seeing whether I activate the heightened senses, which is a wits plus resolve roll.
Is it?
No,
I'm sure got it written down. It was.
That's the pool if you want to resist being blinded by or otherwise overwhelmed. So wits plus resolve difficulty 3 to dampen your senses in time, or else you get overloaded. But just normally it's free and passive.
Yeah.
Never mind then. That was a waste of a critical. Unless
you keep it on for like an entire evening, at which point you might have to roll to maintain it or something.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So no, just go ahead with the awareness roll. That's fine.
Okay. That is 3 successes.
3 successes. Okay, I think that's fine. Sorry, I'm just finding a name here because there was something I hadn't anticipated using in the character sheets, but it might be handy here. Oh, no, it's not there. Good stuff. Okay, let's go with, instead, a lovely random name generator. Yeah, let's go with that. As you're kind of wandering around the party, you don't see any much recognition at all from people. They kind of glance at you and then glance away, clearly more occupied with individuals they have something in common with or anything like that. But as you wander around, you seem to catch the eye of what looks like a kind of man, maybe in his 30s, like a white guy in quite a actually similar clothes to you, sort of like business casual, not terribly expensive, button-up shirt and slacks. He's sort of very skinny and has a kind of like slightly nervous disposition to him, with kind of like some messy blonde hair that he's attempted to kind of smooth down into some semblance of neatness. And he keeps kind of looking over at you when he thinks you're not looking and terribly, and then kind of looking back as soon as he thinks your attention is gone.
I will come to a stop somewhere, against a wall or something in his line of sight and wait to see if he approaches me.
He looks at you kind of nervously a few more times, then evidently gets kind of his courage up and walks over. He has like a glass of blood that's mostly gone. And as he walks over just to you, he kind of slightly trips on the floor as he does so, and kind of rights himself and says, "Oh, I had Dr. Banerjee? That is your name, yes."
Good evening.
I hadn't expected, you had disappeared all those years ago. I'm sorry. I'm Douglas. You probably don't remember me. He holds his hand out.
I will shake it and say, I'm afraid you have caught me at a disadvantage.
Yes. Well, as I say, I don't expect you to remember me at all. But a number of decades ago, sir, I was a great fan of some things you had written in the scientific press, obviously under a different name. And when I ended up entering into our society, I attempted to get several appointments with you, and we interacted to a very limited degree. But then, obviously, you disappeared, sir, and I am just delighted to see that you still, that you're still here.
Well, thank you. I've recently returned to London after, as you say, many decades.
Yes, and I understand. Well, might I ask where you've been, Dr. Banerjee?
That is... a difficult question to answer.
I see. Could I have you been indisposed?
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Very well. He steps a little bit closer into you, in fact, very close into you at this point, and leans very close to your ear and says, "The family has changed, Doctor. Perhaps we had better find a quiet side room." You know what the family is.
Is there a room that you suggest?
Follow me. He leans back and walks over and starts ascending a glass staircase.
I will follow along.
So I think the person we've been away from longest is Tommy, I think. Mm-hmm. How did that roll go for looking for Nosferatu and military types?
I got 3 successes after rolling 5 dice.
Sure. Well, that's enough. I think that we can definitely identify a small group of, look like mostly Nosferatu, but there are a couple of other kindred scattered among them. Of particular note is are 2 individuals who seem to be courting a lot of attention. One of them is a female Nosferatu with very kind of like bubbled greenish skin, who is nevertheless wearing kind of an exquisite long kind of party dress and a kind of coloured veil like dropped over her face, and she's kind of gesturing widely with a glass full of blood, and people are laughing, and she seems to have an unusual number of non-Nosferatu around her. Stood near her, almost in the same group, is a Nosferatu gentleman wearing quite outdated clothes, sort of you get more clothes from your kind of time period, and he has a sort of like a peaked green cap that you'd maybe associate with the Soviets, or definitely Russia. And he's quite calmly talking to another group of individuals, some of whom are Nosferatu, some of whom not. But they're both of them in very different ways seem to be holding court in some fashion.
Is there any, my inclination, because I am not a particularly social individual, my inclination is to lurk in some shadows and see if I can overhear any snippets of conversation before deciding if
Absolutely.
I want to go to...
Although as you do that, you notice that Catherine, arms linked with a fancy-looking gentleman, is walking over to the male Nosferatu to join that group. Does that change what you're doing in any way? Or are you still going to kind of lurk and listen?
I guess. I think I'll still lurk and listen, but my aim is to potentially, if it seems appropriate. No, actually, I don't know if I have this level of social ability, but I was just going, maybe if she seems to be in trouble, I might interject in some way.
Sure, but for the moment, still lurking on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Why don't you give me a resolve plus insight roll to see how well you pick up on things. Okay. But then we'll do a little conversation with Catherine involved as well, and that'll basically determine how much of that you pick up on, right? So
I got 1 success.
Okay. So Catherine, Mears is leading you over to this the male. I mean, I'm describing him thoroughly. It is Oscar Anisoff from the previous parts of our campaign. And he's standing, talking quite quietly to people who nevertheless seem quite kind of rapt, raptly paying him attention. And Mears walks over and loudly goes, "Anisoff, how the bloody hell are you?" And kind of claps him on the shoulder in a very jolly way. Anisoff doesn't appear to react negatively to this, and just kind of turns and says, "Mr. Mears, how charming to see you."
Is he reacting any further? I'm waiting for a nice moment where I can. What's the word? I'm waiting for Henry to do something very slightly gauche, at which point I can move in as a savior.
Absolutely. You don't have to wait long. Mears is kind of blustering and talking to Anisoff and sort of kind of very unsubtly trying to, kind of wangle his way into getting some kind of invitation. And he's basically saying it out loud, which is, as veteran vampire players will know, it's not the way you do things in kindred society by and large. And sort of saying, "Oh, what the hell does a chap have to do to get invited?" All this kind of thing in a kind of jolly way, obviously with an obvious seething undercurrent of impotent rage to it. And yeah, he's doing this quite clearly. Several individuals from the group are drifting away, and one of them in particular, who I will describe for you, who appears to be a short woman of Korean heritage in her early 20s. She's got hair dyed like an oil slick, and she sports various tattoos with a kind of anarchistic bent over her body. And as this is going on, and she kind of drifts away, but before she does so, she wheels round, and behind Henry's back, kind of almost flush to his head, just goes before turning to walk away further.
In the process of letting Mears get himself into a stupid social situation, I would have physically detangled myself subtly, hopefully so he hasn't noticed. And if I manage to spot that happening, I will give her a wink without Henry noticing it.
Okay, you can absolutely do that. He's socially awful.
Yeah.
The woman kind of looks at you in a slightly lingering fashion, kind of takes you in and what you're wearing, and kind of sniffs to herself. And she doesn't seem to react negatively to it, but she kind of doesn't react at all. She just gives you a curious glance and turns away and walks off.
I will at this point interject in the conversation, say, Henry, darling, that there's no need for that. I think we were just, well, I was just wondering how things are done. It has been a while since I've been here. I've been gone for my companions and I. We just came back to London, and we were wondering, darling, if someone could show us the ropes a bit. Tell us what has changed.
Anisov kind of looks over and kind of seems to register you for the first time, tips his head to a side and says, I forgive me if I am remembering this incorrectly, my dear, but am I addressing Lady Catherine Montague?
I will blink slightly and say, yes, you do have that pleasure, darling. And I'll hold out a hand.
That is wonderful to see you here. He kind of kisses your hand gently, some flakes of Nosferatu skin shedding off onto it, and says, we had thought you and your companions lost, but it seems there are bright moments even in the darkest of times.
You're too kind, darling.
I had not expected to see you here, least of all on the arm of Mr. Mears, who I had not considered associated with you in any way.
Oh, we had just met, darling. He was kind enough to show me around a bit, to introduce me to such auspicious people as you.
Yes, indeed. I have always thought of you, Lady Montague, as certainly your own woman, with no need for Henry Mears on your arm. He glances quite calmly and smiles gently at Mears, who kind of straightens his tie a bit and says, yes, well, you just bloody think about what I said, all right? Turns around and stalks off. You have and this is a memoriam again, but a very brief one, a little snippet of something slams into your head. The first time you were told, young ladies don't do that when you went to play with your brothers.
Okay. I will turn back to Anisov and say, and lean in conspiratorially and say, thank you, darling. That he is a frightful bore.
Your language is mild.
Cutting.
I'm curious, Lady Montague. Have you and your companions been with us again long?
No, we just arrived recently, very recently. As I said, we're looking to find our way back into London society.
I see. Well, it is delightful to see you again. I apologize. I have so many people I need to talk to here.
Of course.
Just a word to the wise, Lady Montague. I don't know if you intend to be here long, and obviously faith in one's friends is important. These days, it's not entirely politic to associate with the Giovanni. Indeed, one cannot associate with the Giovanni anymore, but choose your companions well.
That is very kind of you to say. I must admit, these lessons will be hard won, hard learned now that I've not been here for some time. Before you go, could I trouble you for one question?
Of course, my dear.
Have you heard of Angelique being around these nights?
Oh, my dear, you have been gone for a long time, haven't you? He reaches up and sort of seems almost about to kind of like just trace along the side of your face, and then kind of thinks better of himself and lowers it, and says, Angelique is gone, Lady Montague. I know the long decades make fools of us all. I'm sorry. He reaches out and kind of pats your hand and turns and walks away. But you asking that, you know what? I think you've earned another memoriam.
Yay.
Yay.
It's always such a blessing, isn't it?
So, she puts the amulet around your neck and whispers in your ear how much she loves you. In the mirror, the sapphire's glint almost blinds you. It makes it hard to see her. You turn, but she is gone, nothing but the gentle peal of her laughter and the memory of her breath on your neck. You run after her, down the long corridor of elegant wood panels, knowing you will not find her as much as she is lost in the darkness. So, Tommy, one thing you got from that then, let's say you overheard one thing clearly. Now, I'm not a GM who just wants to put the cat among the pigeons.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say what you overheard was Anasoff warning Catherine against associating with Giovanni.
Okay.
You are all aware what Giovanni is, that it is a clan, and that it's maybe you are aware it's not part of the Camarilla, but also that Mithras didn't care about the Camarilla. That's probably, you probably don't know the massive ins and outs of the Giovanni, but that's what you know.
Okay.
You also probably know that it's probably fairly apparent now what clan 3 of you are. And therefore, it would maybe Alice not so much. I don't know. I mean, Tommy is blatantly obvious. Catherine is, unless she's doing an astonishingly good impression of a Ventru, which is possible. But then he wouldn't have warned Catherine. So just these things. That's all.
So I'm like, it's either Alice or Henry, and
I think so. And I don't know. As Alice mentioned being, I actually think Alice may have mentioned being Tremere. Yes, because Shirazi had the conversation about the prime chantry.
Yes.
Yep.
Therefore,
I know, but I didn't volunteer that information though. I didn't. I.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to just discuss my clan like some kind of either Ventru or like.
Some of us don't have a choice. So I guess overhearing that, but seeing that Catherine has had everything perfectly under control, I guess I might try to head towards the other Nosferatu in the room.
Sure.
But as I do, actually, I think, have we seen Shirazi enter at all?
Not yet, but there's a lot of people here, so
Gotcha.
You may simply have not bumped into him.
Sure. Okay.
So
I head over to the other lady.
So okay, you head over to Alice. We've not been with you for a while, so you've had an individual pointed out to you who's of Clan Tremere, and we've done enough beating around the bush with previously established NPCs here. You have had H. Daniel pointed out to you. What are you going over and talking to her?
Absolutely, in a circuitous way, maybe working my way around a few groups to get to her.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm under. Again, there's no need to reveal one's clan. We're not going to run over to the Tremere. We take our time with our plans.
Sure. You end up after maybe half an hour of mingling with people in a group with Aish, who kind of introduces herself to you. Clearly does not know you, or if she does, she's doing a very good job of pretending she doesn't. What are you? How are you going to engage her?
Are we in a large group with lots of other people?
No, let's say that you've managed to catch her while she's separated from other people.
Then I would try to cover her attention and say, I'm sorry, I've been out of society for some time. I've just heard about the fall of what is it? Where is it? It's in
Vienna.
And I just heard about the fall of Vienna, and I really need to know more. I feel that some things have changed, and I haven't had a chance to discuss it with anyone yet.
Well, it's rather a social environment to be having these conversations, but yes, the NFL a few years ago, and the clan is in disarray. It's safe to say. How long have you been indisposed?
I'm not certain. I think around, it's been what, 40 years? No, it's not 40 years. Something around. It was since the 40s, wasn't it? Or was it since...
Yeah, so about 60 years, I think.
About 60
right?
years.
Yeah,
I
65 years.
70.
70, yeah.
The better part of a century.
Well, this may be difficult. The clan has, to a certain extent, disintegrated. The Council of Seven is dead, or many of them are dead. The houses have risen to further prominence, and there is a great deal of internecine fighting about what direction the clan should take next. The pyramid is shattered, gone. Time to find faith in new things. Alice, was it?
Alice, yes. I feel like I might need to relearn a few things. I'm definitely out of practice. Is there someone I can go to, or somewhere I can go to start trying to refresh myself? A few good books to read, a few lessons to learn.
Well, look, if you'd like to talk to an elder, I may be able to get you an inn with one of the more prominent members of the clan in London. Do you recall the name Sri Sansa?
Distantly.
Well, he frequents a restaurant in Southall called the Subtle Spice. If you go there in, well, let's say next Friday, I will try and ensure that he's expecting you.
Thank you.
He has a lot of influence in Southall, so tread carefully.
Thank you very much.
Quite all right. But yes, as I say, time to find faith in new things, Alice. I'm not going to give you a lecture here tonight, but if I can suggest one thing, you need to learn what you can about House Karna, and then if you're interested, she takes a business card out of her pocket. Mm-hmm. That's my number.
Thank you. I'm sure you have many busy things to do.
She nods politely and kind of tips a glass towards you and wanders off, briefly looking at you curiously over her shoulder.
Great.
So, what unresolved stuff had we left? Because I'm aware we're needing time, but I think we've got time for a couple more scenes. So I feel like Catherine and Alice have kind of covered their bases of what they immediately want to do. Tommy, you said you were going to talk to the other Nosferatu, as in you're listening in to the conversation.
No, this one I was going to try and talk to.
Okay. Well, you can feel free to have an interaction. So as you go over and join the group is kind of laughing and mainly along with the female Nosferatu's jokes. As you walk up to the group, she tilts her head and says, "Oh, hello. Come here, young man, come here."
I come.
And she says, "I don't believe I've had the pleasure." And she reaches out and kind of with her entire hand kind of slides it down the side of your face and says, "Oh, beautiful. What a remarkable look you have."
Yes.
Are you new to London, dear?
Yes, in a sense. My name's Tommy.
But you are a resident here, yes?
Yes, that is the best way to put it.
You have a very similar to how Catherine had a very brief moment in memoriam. It doesn't throw you out of the conversation or anything. You have a brief moment, and it is you remember your confusion when people told you to go home when you had known no other but London. She says, "Well, it is delightful to make your acquaintance. I am Mary, sometimes known as Violet Mary." She kind of swings a glass widely, and the group around her kind of like almost kind of cheer and tap their glasses together. You get the feeling it's not like a horribly forced environment, but you know, they're not. You don't feel like they're terrified of her. But certainly it's also that you get the veneer of some kind of act is going on here, you know?
Sure. Yes. Pleased to meet you, Mary. Yes. I appreciated you. You have a lovely aesthetic. I sort of awkwardly probably fumble over my words because I am not a master of etiquette. Yes, I had noted that there aren't so many of people of our persuasion around here. Are there many others in the rooms upstairs?
Oh, there aren't many of our clan in that room, darling. Certainly a couple. I myself could walk into that room at any moment, I'm sure, as could dear Oscar over there. She kind of tips a glass to where Anasoff is. He kind of notices it and kind of tips his cap to her a little bit. And she says, "Are you unused to the how our clan works in London, darling?"
I'm operating on perhaps historical intel, and you have me at a great advantage. But perhaps you could enlighten me.
It seems that way, yes. She leans in slightly to you and says, "If you need protection or work, just come to me or Oscar, darling. We'll take care of you." She kind of reaches around to the back of your head and kind of caresses it slightly in a gesture that seems both somewhat clinical and somewhat sexual. A long time since you've had someone touch your body with any element of the latter. And she says, "Mary will take care of you. Now, if you'll excuse me," she kind of turns away and kind of walks to kind of different groups of people and just generally through the room in a slow procession that seems to take her up towards that room.
Yep. Okay.
I think we've got time for one more scene. Let's cut to a side room. A side room where Henry is talking to someone called Douglas. Douglas, as you proceeded to this room, was kind of like stumbling and sort of stuttering slightly. And talking, saying, "Oh, it's a wonderful honor to meet you. Obviously, I've done." As soon as you walk into that room, he kind of closes the door and turns around and says, "Where the hell have you been, Dr. Banerjee?"
I'm going to remind the storyteller that I have sensed the unseen.
Okay.
Just in case there's anyone overhearing. And I will reply, in a sense, right here.
In Torpor?
I believe. Correct. I'm somewhat out of touch.
Well, you chose a hell of a time to rejoin us.
So I've heard.
The clan you know as Giovanni no longer exists, Dr. Banerjee. We are known as the Hecata now. You better get used to it.
An interesting rename.
We have been joined by others. Various others. Some of them associates, some of them bloodlines long lost.
Interesting.
I know of this and of your importance, Dr. Banerjee, because my sire is your child.
I see.
He looks out over the party and says, another thing has changed, Dr. Banerjee. With Mithras no longer supervising London, we are technically not very welcome here. I would advise you to keep your clan to yourself.
Noted.
Thank you. Also, and I appreciate I have drawn some attention to us by the necessity of talking to you, but I am here in a capacity not entirely anticipated by others. I will walk out that door in a few minutes. Please do not talk to me in public again.
All right. As I have you here, what resources are available to members of the family or the clan here in London?
I have some things available. Look. He draws a kind of notepad out of his pocket, scribbles an address on it, tears it out, passes it to you. Come there. My ghouls will be in attendance. Perhaps we can talk again, but as I said, not in public.
I will fold it up very neatly and tuck it into my shirt pocket.
Very well. He opens the door and says, oh, it was quite a revelation meeting you, Doctor. Thank you so much. And walks out and down some stairs.
I will wait a few moments before I follow him.
Okay. As you walk out of the door, and all of you hear this, Lady Churchill steps out from that doorway into which all the elders have been going and looks down on her notepad and says, Lady Catherine Montague, Alice, Tommy, Henry. The Queen will see you now, and waits at the top to usher you in. And I think we'll leave the session there. Some good old vampire partying going down.
That was great.
If anyone's got any questions or comments, post them in the chat, and Steve will flick them up here for us to answer for you or comment on for you. In the meantime, the usual promo stuff. We've got a bunch of links down below. Link to YouTube and a link to Twitch. You're watching us on one. Why not check us out on the other? We've got a link to Discord where you can talk to us about all kinds of role-playing and telling talesy stuff. We've got a link to our Patreon where you can support us and get lovely things in return, like character creation videos. And links to our social media where we do social media things. You know, that nightmarish stuff. We have a 2 more ongoing weekly series on Mondays and Wednesdays where we play games like this one at 8 o'clock GMT. Mondays is Call of Cthulhu. That's only just started really in the last couple of weeks. And Wednesday is Simba Room, which has been going on since the beginning of time. We also run one-shots monthly. We've done Alien and Troika so far. The VODs for that are over on our YouTube. And the next one will be Mork Borg, which is on Saturday, April the 3rd. It's a doom metal album in RPG form. It's going to be great. Why not come along and watch people play truly awful, reprehensible characters in an awful, reprehensible world that has lots of skulls in it. Yeah, there we go. We didn't have any followers through that, but we had one earlier. So thank you, Artful Killer 23. You followed us today. Thank you very much. I like to think that most Kindred hate Mears because he's so obviously Ventru, and Ventru hate Mears because he's really bad at it. Yeah, also he's just a prick, isn't he? And that, that
exactly.
does tend to jar.
I think you just said exactly what he said.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, but being a prick is not a problem if you're Inventory. You know, as long
Not
as you're-
necessarily. Not if you're good at being it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but he's awful. The funny
To be
thing
honest-
is, we dislike him from this, and yet he's already had his comeuppance in the future.
And
Or at least
in the
early.
past, every encounter with him, he gets
Yeah.
slightly.
I think the real difficulty you're going
Harassed.
to have, Matt, is like making it so that he survives this flashback,
Right, yeah.
so that it's not inconsistent. You know, like-
Maybe you met his twin.
yeah, exactly.
They called Henry.
Actually, yeah, he said his name was Mears. Did he?
It could
Oh,
be
yeah.
Harry Mears.
I can't
Yeah.
remember if he mentioned that.
Actor.
Yeah, how was that for you guys? Did you enjoy kind of little Easter eggy meeting
it's-
the
Yeah.
folks?
So good to be back at a actual Elysium night out. You know, like you know where everything stands. Feels like
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
No joking though, like Elysium meetings is kind of one of the things that I miss from London Ascendant because it's not
it's
a
a
major
very-
part of our old
No,
campaign, but it's,
It's
like
a
okay,
very
you finished.
Vampire the Masquerade thing to do. Yeah.
Yes, having Arthur sprung on me was a bit of a surprise.
That was good.
It was a surprise to me because I just came up with it in the moment. I was like, because I was like, oh, who's going to be providing vessels to this party? Someone with links to
some
the
rando-
circulatory system, which Arthur has. So I was like, and like just asked for someone passionate and maybe rich or whatever. And I was like, why wouldn't Arthur be providing that? So
Yeah, he'll have clear access to that kind of group.
yeah, exactly. Good fun. Good fun stuff. All right. Well, if that's all the questions and comments, then thank you, everyone. Thank you to the lovely players. Thank you to Steve, our lovely stream manager. And thank you to everyone watching. We'll see you next week for more Vampire the Masquerade next Tuesday. Thanks, folks. Stay safe. Bye-bye.